People say you always remember your first love, but no one ever warns you about your first mistake. The kind that doesn't come with warning signs or flashing red lights. The kind that starts with a broken heart, a second glass of wine, and the wrong song playing too softly in the background. The kind of mistake that wears a black suit and speaks in silence, that sees right through you, before you even realize you've been seen. I met Lu Sichen on a night that wasn't supposed to mean anything. A charity gala I didn't want to attend. A city I didn't even live in. I was just there to help backstage. Just a shadow in the background. Just a girl nursing quiet heartbreak and a stinging kind of loneliness I hadn't told anyone about. And then he walked in. He didn't smile. He didn't speak to me right away. But our eyes met, briefly, curiously. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. He was rich, powerful, terrifyingly calm. His eyes were like winter storms, cold at first, then strangely addictive. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't ask. It should have ended there. But hours later, after the lights dimmed and the music faded, I found myself in the hotel lobby bar, one glass too deep, my heels dangling from my hand, and he was there again. He sat beside me without a word. We talked about nothing, but we looked at each other like we could hear our thoughts. We didn't know each other's names at the time. We didn't need to. Maybe that's why it felt safe. Like two strangers meeting in the in-between of life, choosing to forget the world just for a few hours. That's how it happened. One elevator, one long hallway, one room I thought I'd forget by morning. His hands were steady, mine were shaking. I didn't know anything about him except the way he looked at me, like I wasn't background noise, like he needed a place to land just for a night, and I was the only soft thing in reach. He touched me like he was memorizing skin. Not rushing, not controlling, just present. There was no sweetness in it, only silence and warmth and something that felt achingly like loneliness trying to hold loneliness. We didn't speak much, just enough. He asked if I was sure. I was, at the time. I let him kiss away the hurt someone else had left behind. He let me pretend I was someone who hadn't been broken. We didn't sleep that night, not in the restful way. But morning still came, and when it did, I watched him from the door, half asleep, shirtless, one arm over his eyes like the sunlight was too much. I didn't wake him. I slipped out with quiet footsteps and a knot in my stomach. No number, no note, no goodbye. I told myself it would vanish, that it had to. But fate has a wicked sense of humor, because that night didn't just give me regret. It gave me two little boys with his sharp, unreadable eyes and my stubborn, impossible smile. It happened 3 weeks after that night. I wasn't looking for him. I was just existing, getting through the days with a little too much caffeine and a quiet ache I couldn't quite name. Then one evening, while scrolling through my phone in line at the pharmacy, I saw his face, a headline, a name. Lu Sichen appointed youngest chairman in Lu conglomerate history. The picture showed him at a press conference, cold, poised, terrifyingly polished, that same unreadable expression, the one he wore the night we met. My heart dropped, not just because it was him, but because suddenly I had a name for the stranger whose eyes I couldn't forget. The man I'd shared one reckless, fragile night with was Lu Sichen. He wasn't just rich, he was the Lu Sichen. The kind of man who made headlines when he blinked. Powerful, ruthless, a legacy in a black suit. And me? Just a nobody with secondhand shoes and a fading memory I'd been trying to scrub out of my skin. I closed the article. I told myself it didn't matter, I'd never see him again. But 2 days later, I stood in that same pharmacy aisle, holding a pregnancy test with shaking hands. And suddenly, he wasn't just a headline. He was the father of the life growing inside me. 5 years later, I thought I'd done a decent job disappearing. Not in the dramatic movie kind of way. Just quiet, intentional, thorough. I left no trail behind, just a fake forwarding address and 1,000 unsent drafts of letters I never had the courage to write. I changed cities, changed my number, deleted all my old social accounts. I cut ties with people who once knew me in passing, and with the girl I used to be, naive, impulsive, and still foolishly hoping life would turn out like the dramas she used to binge. I didn't need a new beginning. I just needed peace. A pause. A pocket of the world where I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. And I found it in the most ordinary places. A modest apartment where the heater only half worked in winter. a quiet job working behind the curtains of other people's moments. Backstage at events, pressing seams, holding clipboards, handing out water bottles and smiles I didn't always feel. It wasn't glamorous, it didn't sparkle, but it was safe, and safe was everything. Especially when you're raising two little boys who didn't ask to be born into a secret. Yibo and Yichin. My sun, my stars, and my beautiful chaotic reminder that life sometimes grows in the aftermath of mistakes. They were born in the spring. Two tiny bundles with cries louder than their size and eyes that felt impossibly familiar. Yichin had a mole under his left eye. I hadn't noticed it at first, too tired, too overwhelmed, but when I finally did, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to think about what it meant. But some truths etch themselves into your children's faces. I named them in a haze of postpartum exhaustion and midnight lullabies. Only months later did I realize what I'd done. Yichin. His name. His last name. I didn't know why I chose it. Maybe I did. Maybe I just needed to believe part of him could be good, even if he'd never know. The boys didn't need a father. Not when they had me. Not when I was the one holding them through fevers, making up bedtime stories about foxes in space, and learning how to braid hair for school picture day because Yibo insisted it was only fair if I could do what cartoon dads could. We were a strange, joyful mess. We sang while brushing our teeth. We danced while sweeping. I worked odd hours to make ends meet, took side gigs, mending dresses, or babysitting on weekends, just to afford the little things. Extra marshmallows for our hot cocoa, dinosaur pajamas, matching backpacks with tiny foxes stitched on the front. They didn't know they were missing anything, and I worked hard to keep it that way. In their world, there were no missing puzzle pieces. Just me, their mama, their hero, their everything. And I loved them enough to believe that was enough. Even if a quiet part of me, the part I buried deepest, sometimes wondered if they'd ask about him one day. If they'd look in the mirror and feel the absence the way I did when I saw Yichin's serious gaze or Yibo's half smile and thought he didn't even remember me. That night was supposed to be forgettable. He probably forgot it the moment I walked out that hotel room door. And I told myself that was a good thing, because if he ever remembered, everything I'd built could fall apart. The night everything fell apart again, Dean, it was supposed to be just another job, a gala for some tech conglomerate, big names, big wallets, and a guest list full of people who'd never noticed someone like me. I was working backstage, like always, tucking flyaway hairs into place, adjusting dresses, checking lighting cues, hair tied up, head down, invisible, like I'd trained myself to be. But then, something shifted, a stillness. Like the air held its breath. I didn't see him right away. I felt him. That strange pull in your chest when someone from your past steps into your present like they never left. I looked up, and there he was, Liu Shichen. And just like that, time folded in on itself. He looked exactly the same, only more untouchable. Tall, sharp lines, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire monthly rent. Still with that face carved out of quiet storms, unimpressed, unreadable, like nothing in the room could move him. I froze. Then I ducked behind a stack of props, heart pounding so loud it nearly drowned out the music playing through the ballroom speakers. He wouldn't recognize me. He couldn't. 5 years had passed. Just one night. We hadn't even exchanged names. Maybe I looked different now. A little older, a little smaller, always tired. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he'd walk right past me without a second glance. But when I turned around to grab a clipboard, he was there, standing too close, too still. His voice didn't match the chaos around us. It was low, calm, and cold in a way that sent ice through my spine. I know you had my kids, and you're hiding them from me. My breath caught, because he wasn't asking. He knew. 5 years ago, I left that hotel room alone. I didn't even leave a note. No thank you, no fake names scribbled on hotel stationery. Just the echo of soft breathing behind me and the sound of my heels on polished marble as I slipped out before sunrise. I thought I was doing the right thing. Walking away while things were still simple. Before names, before numbers, before reality could ruin whatever that strange, quiet night had been. At the time, I didn't know who he was, but part of me sensed it, that he belonged to a world I could never touch. A world of headlines and handshakes, glass towers, and sharp-suited secrets. A man like him didn't wake up next to girls like me. And once I found out his name, Lu Shichen, everything made even more painful sense. He was a CEO, a power in motion, the kind of man whose gaze made boardrooms go silent and reporters second-guess their questions. He had a legacy that spanned generations. And me? I was just a girl trying to survive rent hikes and secondhand disappointment. Just a backstage shadow in a borrowed dress and cracked phone screen. I remember standing at the edge of that hotel lobby, hand on the door, whispering to myself, it was just one night. Let it stay that way. Because I knew what came next if I stayed. Paparazzi, rumors, that inevitable look of pity or calculation when someone like him had to clean up someone like me. And worse, I knew if I gave him the chance, just one more minute, one more glance, I wouldn't leave. So I did it before he could ask me to stay. Before I could look at him again and believe, even for a moment, that I was something more than a detour in his perfectly controlled life. I told myself I was protecting both of us. But really, I was running. Running before things got complicated. Before I could become a headline. Before my babies, our babies, could become a scandal someone tried to silence. And for 5 years, I convinced myself he would have done the same. That forgetting me was the easiest thing he ever did. Until the moment he looked me in the eye and said, I know you had my kids. And I realized he hadn't forgotten anything. But the scariest part? It wasn't that he had found me, or that he had figured out the truth. It was that tiny, aching part of me, the one I tried to bury under years of survival and silence, that felt something close to relief, that he remembered me, that I hadn't just been a blur in the dark, that I wasn't the only one still haunted by that night. For years I told myself he forgot, that it meant nothing to him, that I was protecting the boys by keeping them away from a man too powerful, too unreachable, too far removed from our world. But now, standing in front of him with his eyes locked on mine and his voice as steady as ever, all I could think was, he knows. I tried to deflect. It was instinct. So I forced a shaky laugh and looked away, pretending to scan the event checklist in my hand like the room wasn't spinning. I don't know what you think you know, I said quietly, but you've got the wrong person. He didn't blink, didn't move, didn't even tilt his head. He just looked at me like he was trying to read a book with torn out pages. One of them, he said, his voice low, steady, unshaken, has a small mole under his left eye, just like me. I froze, because he was right. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of a folding table beside me to steady myself, but I didn't say a word. How could I? No one knew that. I hadn't posted photos, hadn't shared birthdays or baby updates online. My closest friends didn't even know the full truth. I'd been careful, obsessively so. But somehow, he'd found out. How? I started, my voice barely a whisper. How do you know that? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, not threatening, but deliberate. I started looking after the second time I saw you, he said softly. At another event 2 years ago. You didn't see me. You left early, but I recognized you. I remembered you. I swallowed hard, chest tightening. You didn't even know my name, I said, half in disbelief, half in fear. That night, we didn't even talk. He nodded slowly, and I still remembered your face, your eyes, the way you looked at me like you weren't afraid of who I was. Do you know how rare that is? My throat felt dry. That doesn't mean they're yours, I said, quieter now. Not out of defiance, but desperation. You don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about me. There was a pause. He looked away for the first time, jaw tightening like he was holding back too many words at once. When he looked back at me, his voice had changed, still calm but cracked around the edges. I know you didn't tell me, he said, softer now. I know you ran. I don't know why, but I know I deserved to know. I had a right to. He stopped himself. I could see the hurt flash in his eyes, even if he tried to mask it. You think I'm angry, he continued, quieter still. But I'm not. He let out a breath. I'm just trying to understand how I missed 5 years of their lives. How I didn't even get the chance to want them. That undid me, because he wasn't yelling, he wasn't threatening, he wasn't demanding anything. He was standing there, like someone who just discovered a missing piece of himself existed, and had been kept hidden in the shadows this whole time. And I wanted to lie. I wanted to run. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his business, that we were fine without him, that I didn't need saving, and neither did the boys. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I knew I hadn't just hidden the truth to protect the boys. I'd hidden it to protect myself. From this. From him. From the possibility that he might care and that I might let myself want that. And now he was here. Not demanding custody, not making accusations, just looking at me like I'd stolen something sacred. "They're mine," he said again, gently this time, "and you don't get to erase me like I never existed." His voice cracked just slightly at the end. And for the first time in 5 years, I realized this wasn't about a powerful CEO showing up to claim ownership. This was a man grieving time he never got to have. Now what? I couldn't run again. God, I wanted to. My body knew how to do it by now, how to disappear, how to pack a life into 2 duffel bags and slip through cracks no one was looking at. But I had 2 reasons I couldn't. Yibo and Yichin. Every night, they asked questions in voices so soft it broke me. Why don't we have a daddy like the kids on TV? Did daddy go to space? Will daddy come back when we're bigger? And I gave them the kindest lies I could find. But now I couldn't lie anymore. Not when he was standing in front of me, real and solid and staring like he'd waited 5 years for this moment. But I couldn't just hand them over either. Not to a stranger. Not to him. Lushichin had once touched me like I was something rare, something fragile, something more than just a girl escaping her own loneliness for one night. And then he'd vanished. No calls, no search. No shadow lingering on my door. He became a memory I forced myself to forget, a dream I convinced myself I imagined, because believing he never cared was easier than wondering why he didn't try. But now here he was, not like I remembered, not some untouchable myth in a crisp suit, but a man, still unreadable, still cold, but somehow heavier, older, like time hadn't been as kind to him as I'd imagined. He looked at me, unmoved by my silence. "Say something," he said, voice low and flat, like emotion was something he'd surgically removed a long time ago. I stared back at him, the words caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. Finally, I whispered, "You don't get to walk back into my life and act like you care." His jaw clenched slightly. That was his version of emotion. "I never left," he replied. "You did." It was quiet, matter of fact, like he wasn't here to apologize, just to remind me of the math I'd tried to rewrite. I blinked hard, something stinging at the corner of my eyes. "You didn't come after me. I didn't know I was supposed to." That hurt more than I expected. He looked at me like I was the irrational one, like the wound was mine for leaving, not his for forgetting. "You didn't ask for my name," I said, a little sharper now. "You didn't even ask if I got home safe." He didn't flinch, didn't defend himself. He just said, "And yet 5 years later, I still recognized you." A pause. "And them." That shut me up, because I couldn't argue with that. He stepped closer, still keeping distance, but the kind that made you feel like even air couldn't get between his words and your bones. "I've watched from afar," he said. "I waited, I searched, I wasn't sure until I saw their faces." I exhaled shakily. "So now what? You want shared custody? Weekend visits? Christmas mornings in court?" His expression didn't change. "I want the truth. Simple, final, terrifying." I looked away. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But I didn't trust myself either, especially the way my chest tightened when he said things like, "I still recognized you." That night after the gala, I had slipped out the back door again, history repeating itself. But this time, I clutched my purse like it was a lifeline, because inside it were the boys' drawings from that morning. 2 stick figures with wild hair and crooked smiles. One had glasses, the other, my eyes. And in between them, a third figure drawn in thick black crayon. "Is this me?" I'd asked, smiling. "No," they both said. "That's Daddy. We made him up." I'd laughed then, a soft, hollow sound, pretending it didn't mean anything. But now here he was, not made up anymore. Lu Shichen didn't need to raise his voice to make the air feel like glass about to shatter. He didn't threaten. He didn't plead. He just looked at me, like I'd stolen something. "You had no right," he said calmly, coldly, "to take them away before I even knew they existed." I bristled. "And you had no right to disappear like you never touched me at all." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Pain? I couldn't tell. Whatever it was, it disappeared almost instantly. "What do you want from me?" I asked, softer now. "I don't want your past," he said. "I want my sons." I looked up at him, tears threatening but not falling. "They're not pieces you can just take back." He nodded once. "I know." A pause stretched between us, brittle and aching. "But I won't walk away this time," he said, voice like steel under silk. "You can hate me, but I'm not letting you shut the door again. Not on them." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because for the first time in 5 years, the man I had once convinced myself to forget was no longer a memory. He was a father, and he was here, and I had no idea what that meant. For them, for me, or for the girl who once ran before things could get complicated. But I knew one thing. This time, running wouldn't save us. The day he found us. It was a Saturday, late morning, the kind of calm day where nothing happens and you're quietly grateful for it. The boys were on the floor arguing about whether dinosaurs could survive in outer space. I was in the kitchen, microwaving leftover noodles and humming under my breath. Then I heard it. Not a knock. Not yet. First came the sound of an engine outside, low, smooth, and too expensive to belong to anyone on our street. My neighbor's broom paused mid-sweep. Even the kids across the hall stopped yelling. I didn't move. Not right away. Because something deep in my chest already knew. When the knock came, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was confident. Quiet. Icy. I opened the door, and there he was. Lu Shichin, dressed in a charcoal gray coat and black turtleneck, standing like the entire world had bent itself around him. Still, cold, effortlessly intimidating. Behind him, a car that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie idled by the curb. Two men in dark suits stood at attention like marble statues. He didn't say hello, didn't offer a polite smile, didn't soften anything. Not his gaze, not his stance, not his presence. Where are they? He just that. Straight to the point. Straight to the part I'd been dreading for 5 years. My breath caught. I didn't step back, but I didn't invite him in either. I looked him in the eye and said quietly, "I'm not ready." His response was just as quiet. "You had 5 years. The first time he saw them, I didn't let him inside. Not my home. Not yet. It was too small, too lived in, too fragile. It still smelled like crayons and pancake syrup. I needed distance, neutral ground. So I told him to meet us at the park the next morning. A public place. Somewhere the air felt safer. Somewhere I could still run if I had to. I dressed the boys in their favorite sweaters, blue for Yibo, yellow for Yichin, and told them they were going to meet someone important. "A friend?" Yichin asked. "A very serious friend," I said. When we got there, they ran straight for the open field, chasing pigeons and trying to see who could jump higher. I sat on the bench with my heart in my throat. He arrived 5 minutes later. No grand entrance. No security this time. Just Lu Shichin, alone, hands in his coat pockets, walking like the wind didn't dare push against him. He stopped a few feet away from us and froze. His eyes locked on the boys. No words, no expression. He didn't smile. He didn't kneel. He didn't breathe, not right away. He just stood there, like the ground beneath him had tilted. Yibo was the first to notice. He squinted up at the tall stranger and said, "Mama, is that the rich man from the cartoon?" Yichin tilted his head, quiet for a second. Then softly, "He looks like me." And that's when it happened. The shift, the first visible crack in his armor. Lu Shichin dropped to his knees, slowly, controlled. Like even this movement was a risk. He didn't speak to them, not yet. He looked at them like they were a memory he'd never been given, a lifetime he'd missed and could never ask for back. And then without looking up, he whispered, "I'm sorry." Not loud, not for show, not even to be forgiven. Just truth, bare and unpolished. To no one. To them. To me. To the time he lost and the years I stole. And in that moment, for the first time since I met him, Lu Shichin didn't look powerful, or terrifying, or cold. He looked like a man learning how to be human. Too late, but maybe, just maybe, not too late. His family wasn't pleased. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a little silence, maybe even coldness from the Lu family, but nothing could have prepared me for the sheer weight of disapproval they carried like it was a family heirloom. Lu Shichin told me the truth in pieces. One night, after the twins had fallen asleep in their new beds, bigger, softer, cleaner than anything I could afford, he sat across from me on the wide balcony of the villa. The night air was cold, but his voice was colder. They said, "Who is this girl? She's just after your money. How do you even know they're yours? Do a DNA test and get rid of her." I didn't answer right away, just stared out over the dark hills and listened to the cicadas hum like they didn't care about bloodlines or boardroom whispers. "And what did you say?" I asked carefully. He looked at me, just looked. I said they were mine. That was all that mattered. That should have made me feel better, safer, seen. But it didn't, because I knew people like his family, the kind who didn't just disapprove, they erased what didn't fit. And me? I was a glitch in their legacy. I'm not someone you marry to prove a point, I said, voice shaking more than I meant it to. If this is about proving anything to them, it's not, he cut in. He cut in. Still calm, still unreadable, but it's my job to protect what's mine. I'm not yours, Lushichin. No, he murmured, with something that almost sounded like regret. But they are, and they came from you. Then the paparazzi found us. It started with one blurry photo. Me, crouched down tying Yichin's shoes, Yibo clutching my hand, mid-giggle. And behind us, Lu Shichin, stoic, composed, shielding their faces with his coat like it was instinct. The headline? Lu Shichin's secret family, mystery woman and twins cause media storm. By nightfall, it was everywhere. News feeds, social media, screens in mall food courts. Reporters swarmed our old apartment building. Camera flashes lit up my curtains like lightning. I had to shove pillows against the windows while my sons asked why people were shouting Mama's name like they were mad at her. Are we in trouble? Yibo asked, voice small. Is it because we drew a mustache on the neighbor's dog? Yichin whispered. I smiled, lied, said it was nothing, then locked myself in the bathroom and cried until I was sliding down the wall, my knees numb against the tile. And then, he came. There was a soft knock on the door, not demanding, not cold, just there. When I opened it, Lu Shichin stood in the hallway in a black cap and hoodie, looking more like a ghost than a billionaire. There's a driver downstairs, he said. Garage level, no cameras. You think I want to sneak off with you like some dirty secret? I bit out. He didn't flinch. No, he said. Then softer, I'm not dragging you into my world. I'm trying to pull you out of the chaos I caused. I hesitated. I should have said no. Should have told him to clean up his mess without me. But I didn't, because deep down, a tired, scared part of me just wanted the boys to feel safe again. The villa was outside the city. High gates, long driveway, walls covered in ivy. The kind of place where time moved slower. The boys called it a castle. They ran down the halls like princes of some forgotten kingdom. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the Lu family to show up at the gate, for Lu Shichin to retreat behind a wall of meetings and silence. But every night, like clockwork, he came home. No fanfare, no grand speeches. Just him, removing his coat at the door, sitting on the rug while Yibo showed him his new robot and Yichin tried to explain his drawing of a spaceship powered by spaghetti. He didn't laugh out loud, but he always listened. He asked questions, tried knock-knock jokes with the wrong punchlines, let them crawl into his lap when they were tired, tucked them in like he was learning how to be gentle in real time. Sometimes I watched from the hallway, unseen, and sometimes he saw me too. Our eyes would meet across the room, quiet, heavy, not lovers, not enemies, something in between, something, waiting. One night, after they were asleep, I handed him a cup of tea on the terrace. He took it without a word, our fingers brushing, barely. Why are you still here? I asked. He looked at the stars for a long moment, then said quietly, because the first time I saw them, I felt something I've never felt before. And what was that? I whispered. He turned to me then, and for the first time his voice softened completely. Fear, that I could lose them before I ever got the chance to love them. My breath caught. And in that silence between us, a new kind of ache was born, one I wasn't sure how to name yet, but I felt it, and so did he. Romance came softly, like a wound learning to heal. He was careful with me, not in a patronizing way, but in the way someone handles glass they broke with their own hands and never thought they'd get the chance to piece back together. At first, it annoyed me. He knocked before entering every room, even if the door was open. He kept his distance, except around the boys. He spoke to me like he was afraid one wrong word would send me vanishing into thin air again. You don't have to tiptoe around me, I told him one night while washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, hair messier than I liked. You vanished once, he said quietly, drying a plate beside me. I'm still not sure I deserve to find you again. I didn't know how to answer that, so I handed him the next dish. We argued too. Not screaming matches, but tired words spoken at the end of long days when nerves were frayed and everything felt uncertain. You can't buy your way into fatherhood? I snapped once after he brought the twins matching tablets. And you can't erase me just because you're scared, he replied, not unkind, just steady, like he believed it with his whole chest. There were nights I hated how right he sounded. And then, there were moments that changed something. Like the night we both found Yibo asleep on the kitchen floor, peanut butter smeared across his cheeks, crackers in both hands, muttering something about building a sandwich kingdom. We laughed, really laughed. The kind of laugh that steals your breath and softens your heart even when you don't want it to. Or the night he took me to a rooftop, just the two of us, after the twins were asleep and the air smelled like rain. No guards, no cameras, just the city breathing beneath us and silence that felt safe for once. Do you regret it? I asked quietly, leaning against the railing, unsure if I meant the night we met or the 5 years after. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Only the part where you left before I had the chance to fall properly, he said. And then slowly, like he didn't want to scare me, he reached out and touched my hand. Not possessive, not forceful, just home. I didn't pull away. But his world was never simple. We could pretend for a while that we were ordinary, that we could build a bubble where the past didn't knock and the future didn't demand anything. But bubbles pop. The Liu family didn't sit quietly. The board wanted headlines cleaned. They used words like responsibility, reputation, and damage control. Marry someone suitable, they said. Send the boys overseas. Put the mother on a stipend. Keep this clean. No emotion, no drama, no press. He didn't tell me this to scare me. He told me because I deserved to know. And what did you say to them? I asked one night as we sat side by side on the villa steps, the twins' laughter echoing from upstairs. He looked ahead. Quiet for a moment. I said I built my name on my own, and I'll choose who stands next to me. On my own, too. One night, when I couldn't sleep, when fear gnawed at the edge of something fragile we were building, I found him on the balcony, shirt sleeves rolled, sipping tea like a man who hadn't let his mask down in years. I stood there, uncertain, arms crossed, breath uneven. He noticed. Always did. You think I'll leave? He asked softly. No, I whispered. I think I'll ruin everything. He put the cup down, walked over to me without a single hurried step, and then, without asking, just feeling, he pulled me gently to his chest. His chin rested atop my head, his breath steady, his words lower than the wind. Don't run from me again, he said. I'll chase you every time. And I believed him. For the first time, I let myself believe him. The ending I never thought I deserved. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of a polished marble stage, my fingers laced tightly with his. Liu Shichen, the man once rumored to have ice in his veins, held my hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. The lights above were warm, cameras flashed like lightning, and a sea of reporters leaned forward with bated curiosity. But all I could hear was the sound of my sons giggling in the front row, Yi-Chen with his shoes on the wrong feet, Yibo wearing a superhero cape under his blazer, both kicking their heels and whispering jokes to each other. I wore a pale blue dress, simple, soft, the kind that fluttered when I moved. He'd picked it out himself, quietly leaving it on my bed that morning with a handwritten note that said, "You make everything look like spring." He stood beside me in his usual black suit, but the edges of his expression were no longer so sharp. He still looked like power personified, but there was warmth now, subtle, gentle, just enough to make people wonder if they'd ever known him at all. A reporter stood up in the middle of the room, flashing a mic toward us. "Mr. Liu," she asked, her voice slicing through the noise, "is this your family?" It was the question we all knew was coming, the one the tabloids had guessed at, the one his board still winced over. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at me for reassurance. He didn't pause long enough for nerves. He just squeezed my hand and said, clearly and without hesitation, "No." A hush swept the room, one of those stunned, collective silences where everyone holds their breath. And then he added, "This isn't just my family. This is my life. Everything before her was just survival. Everything after her, after them, is finally living." My heart cracked wide open. Behind us, Yibo leaned into his brother and whispered loudly enough for the whole room to hear, "He means us," and Yi-Chen beamed. "We're the life part." Laughter trickled through the crowd, soft and unsure at first, but real. Yi-Chen smiled, actually smiled, not for show, Not for business, just for us. He leaned in then, pressing the gentlest kiss to my temple, like he was reminding me we were no longer a secret, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. You were never a mistake, he whispered into my hair. You were the thing I didn't know how to fight for back then. I know now. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive in flowers and fireworks. Sometimes it comes with awkward silences, missed chances, and years of growing separately before finding your way back home. And as I looked at my sons, laughing, safe, loved, at the man who used to terrify the world and now held crayons for bedtime drawing contests, I realized this wasn't the ending. This was the beginning of the life we all thought we'd never get to have. And it was ours.